You are a 34-year-old man, and your wife is 32. You have a daughter who is almost 3 years old. After your daughter was born, intimacy in your marriage significantly declined, as your wife felt touched out due to the physical and emotional demands of pregnancy and motherhood. Over the past nearly 4 years, including during her pregnancy, there has been very little physical connection between you two, no hugs, cuddling, or kissing, and you respected her need for space. About a year after your daughter was born, you asked your wife if she was ready to reconnect physically, but she rejected your attempts. Following that, you made adjustments to your life, hiring a babysitter to give your wife time to herself, while also setting aside a night for date nights. Despite your efforts to rekindle some intimacy, she continued to reject your attempts, even suggesting that you find other ways to meet your needs. Taking her words to heart, you turned to toys and self-care to manage your physical needs without pressuring her, and over time, you grew accustomed to living without physical closeness. Recently, your wife has started to show interest in reconnecting physically, but by this point, you've become disconnected. When she initiated intimacy 2 weeks ago, you politely declined, telling her that you needed time to get undressed and shower, then locked the door to shower alone. She tried to join you, but you avoided it. You even purchased toys for her, suggesting that she use them to meet her needs for now. However, when she confronted you last week, asking why you no longer seemed to want her, you explained that after almost 4 years without her physical touch, you've learned to cope on your own. You reassured her that you still find her attractive, but you need time to rediscover your desire for her. You offer to try working on it over the next few weeks to months, but acknowledge that you're not yet ready to re-engage. Your wife felt hurt by this, wondering if you were punishing her, but you told her that you simply don't have the energy for that and are not doing so intentionally. You've reached a point where, after years of being rejected, you've adjusted to not having physical affection. You shared this with friends, receiving mixed responses. One friend told you that you weren't wrong, as you've been taught to live without her touch and need time to readjust. Another suggested just doing what your wife wants, even if you mentally disconnect during the act. Now, you're asking if you're in the wrong for feeling the way you do. You've read responses from others in similar situations, many of which suggest that 4 years of rejection can deeply damage a relationship and make reconnecting very difficult. Others point out that while your wife may want to rekindle the intimacy, it's understandable that you're struggling to do so after so long without any physical closeness. The general advice you've seen, and which you may want to consider, includes therapy. Many suggest couples therapy to help you both work through the emotional disconnect and build back trust and intimacy at a pace that feels comfortable for both of you. Honest communication, open conversations about your feelings, her expectations, and where you both are emotionally may help in understanding each other's perspectives better. Patience. After nearly 4 years of distance, rebuilding intimacy will take time. Both of you need to be patient with yourselves and each other as you try to reconnect. At this stage, you're not alone in feeling disconnected after so long without intimacy. While your wife's readiness to reconnect now is valid, so is your need for time to readjust. Many agree that resolving these issues requires mutual effort and communication, likely with professional help, to rebuild the trust and physical closeness you've lost over time. You've come back to provide an update on your relationship, and unfortunately you and your wife are now divorcing. After the recent conversation where she asked why you no longer seemed physically attracted to her, things escalated into an argument. You presented her with several options to address the issue in your relationship: an open marriage, divorce, therapy, or simply giving you time until your attraction to her returned. To your surprise, your wife said she would prefer an open marriage, but only on her side. She wanted to be with other men, but you wouldn't be seeing anyone else. You agreed to this without much emotional investment, since your connection to her had already diminished. However, this decision sparked an intense reaction from her. She became angry that you would allow other men to be intimate with her. In the heat of the argument, she confessed that she had already been cheating on you, confirming the suspicions that many people had. This admission of infidelity was the breaking point for you. Despite a request for an open marriage, you decided to move forward with divorce because, as you pointed out to her, the open marriage would have been a mutual agreement going forward, not something that retroactively justified her cheating. Since then, you filed for divorce, and the two of you have been splitting time with your daughter. Your wife has moved out of the home and is currently staying with friends. In reflecting on your relationship, you've been receiving a lot of feedback from others, both online and in person. Some commenters have expressed that your wife likely gave her affection to someone else long ago, and her recent attempts to reconnect with you may have stemmed from guilt or other motives. They've pointed out how unjust it was for her to reject you for years, only to expect you to be immediately available to her when it suited her needs. There's also the theory that she may have wanted to reconnect in order to have another baby, but her motives became irrelevant after admitting the affair. Others have shared their fear of entering relationships because of how easily trust can be broken, as it was in your case. Some have highlighted the emotional damage that long-term rejection and infidelity can do to a person and a marriage. They empathize with how deeply hurt you must feel by your wife's betrayal after years of making efforts to support her and keep your family intact. This situation has left you with the realization that the bond between you and your wife was broken not just by physical neglect, but by her giving herself to someone else. You now have to move forward with a divorce and figure out co-parenting with your daughter in mind. Some have even speculated that you may need to confirm your daughter's paternity, given your wife's dishonesty. People are also reflecting on the emotional toll of relationships like yours and how crucial it is to be deliberate and careful in choosing a life partner. They mention how important it is to approach relationships with maturity, communication, and mutual respect, all of which seem to have been lacking in your marriage, especially after the birth of your daughter. In terms of your mental state, this experience has understandably been draining and has left you feeling cautious about relationships in the future. Many have advised seeking therapy for yourself to process everything you've gone through and to prepare yourself for the challenges of divorce, co-parenting, and possibly dating again down the line. In conclusion, this update reveals the painful truths of your marriage, and the decision to divorce appears to be the best path forward for you both. As you navigate this next chapter, focusing on your well-being and your relationship with your daughter will be key. Initially, Tom was very defensive about Julia's behavior, insisting that the concerns being raised were exaggerated. He believed that his wife was misinterpreting Julia's actions, seeing them as having more sinister intentions than they actually did. However, during their marriage counseling sessions, the counselor pointed out that Tom's repeated invalidation of his wife's feelings has significantly strained their marriage. The counselor emphasized that overcoming this burden would take time, and that the key to alleviating the emotional weight was for Tom to genuinely trust his wife's impressions and feelings about Julia. After a particularly intense counseling session, while Tom agreed with many of the counselor's points, he remained adamant that Julia harbored no feelings for him. His wife argued that based on Julia's past behavior, it was likely that Julia still had some lingering affection for Tom, whether she admitted it or not. Tom dismissed this, claiming that she was reading too much into it, which infuriated her. It felt to her as if Tom had not learned anything from their counseling sessions. In an attempt to make Tom understand the depth of her pain and frustration, she decided to confront him more directly. While at a gym, she flirted with a stranger in fitness gear, complimenting his muscles and suggesting they work out together. When Tom saw this, he became furious and demanded an explanation. She told him that the explanation lay in her actions. She needed him to see how it felt to experience jealousy and hurt. Tom's reaction was understandably intense, as he felt betrayed. He insisted that her behavior was purely flirtatious, whereas Julia's actions were likely innocent. His wife countered that the intentions didn't matter. Both actions resulted in similar feelings of insecurity and betrayal. Despite her efforts, Tom continued to defend Julia months later, which left her feeling increasingly frustrated. Comments from others reflected that Tom was intentionally ignoring Julia's behavior and that this would ultimately encourage it. Many believed Tom had unresolved feelings for Julia, and he might be hesitant to acknowledge that Julia could want him. This tension put a strain on the marriage, leading to concerns that it might end, especially since it appeared that Julia would end up with what she desired. Some commenters criticized the dynamic, suggesting that women like Julia often provoke tension between couples, while the men remain oblivious. They question why men often fail to recognize the pain their partners express, especially when it becomes so pronounced. Others express sympathy for Tom's wife, highlighting the distress she felt from Julia's actions, particularly an incident where Julia damaged a dress of hers and sent a hurtful gift that made Tom realize the extent of Julia's disrespect. Ultimately, the overarching sentiment was that Tom's wife was not in the wrong for her actions. Rather, the focus was on Tom's inability to set boundaries with Julia and his failure to recognize the hurt his wife was experiencing. The commentary suggested that she should not have to resort to games or flirtation to make her husband understand her pain, especially after repeatedly expressing her feelings. It was evident that Tom had neglected to protect their marriage from external threats, such as Julia, which only exacerbated the couple's issues. The idea that Tom only reacted when he felt humiliated himself pointed to deeper issues in their relationship, raising questions about whether he truly respected his wife's feelings, or if he was simply responding to his own discomfort. The discussion underscored the importance of addressing emotional affairs and the need for clear boundaries in any healthy relationship.